The human population has exploded in the last millennium and grown by approximately 2,000%. Most of this increase began in the last 50 years, which is quite alarming. Many resources on the planet are finite, and instead of developing a way to stop the depletion of resources, we have increased our use as a result of growing lifespans and higher birth rates thanks to advanced medical care. The issue we face now is whether or not overpopulation will be a major problem in the coming decades, and if so, what can be done to stop it. We interviewed English professor Mary Miles for her opinions on our future.
I think it's a little bit of a problem that has to do with people's expectations that people, especially in sort of quote first world countries, have certain expectations for their lives and the resources that will be available for them, and those may not be met in future generations to reproduce at the rate that we're going. I think that, like I said, it has a lot to do with expectations as to how one's life will be led. I think right now the idea that there's literally not enough food is more of a logistical issue, that we could get the food to people, but I would be in favor of some sort of voluntary embracing of limiting reproduction.
The first theories about overpopulation problems started with British economic scholar Thomas Malthus in his book, An Essay on the Principle of Population, which was published in 1798. Malthus proposed that the world's population was growing at faster rates than the availability of resources could keep up with, eventually leading to a time in which the world's population would exceed its resource needs. This theoretical time is coined as Malthusian catastrophe, where war and famine would break out over the scarce resources and possibly end in chaotic results. While Malthus was one of the first to depict the enormous detrimental potentials of future overpopulation, his theories created neo-Malthusian supporters who advocated for enforced policies to control population. One of the most well-known and prominent policies to control population was the one-child policy.
When global population growth skyrocketed in the mid-20th century, people became worried that the exponential growth would soon lead to more people than the Earth's resources could support. One country that recognized this problem was China. In 1971, they adopted the one-child policy, which restricted the number of children each family could have to one. While this was one of the most effective and one of the first policies adopted to control population growth, and it averted around 200 million births in 30 years, it was highly debated because of the ethics. Women could not choose how many children they wanted to have, and girls were often aborted, killed, or abandoned because couples preferred to have male children and they only had one chance to achieve this. However, for its purpose of controlling population growth, it was effective and could be considered as a method for other countries to use.
So do you think with the one-child policy that was a good strategy to force everyone to have one child, or do you think that if we left it up to everyone that to choose it would be better?
My personal sort of ideology is that those types of decisions should be left up to the individual. If we reach a crisis point, sometimes individuals don't step up and do the right thing voluntarily. That's the sort of unfortunate reality of life. And I would like to believe that people will voluntarily think, well, I would like my offspring to enjoy a world and resources that I have enjoyed in my life, and so rarely make choices about limiting my reproduction. But I don't know that people will do that voluntarily, and so I'm sort of ambivalent about what's happened in China, that I can understand why they did that. I sort of instinctively resent the idea that they would intrude on somebody's private decisions that way, but I can understand the rationale behind it.
I think that's all I have right now, but thank you.
Did that make it?
Although many people believe that overpopulation is a serious threat to our world, there are many others that maintain that it is not a legitimate risk. These people believe that as technology continues to advance, it will allow the Earth to sustain the inflated population that is expected in the near future. Further, with technological advances that tap into new resources, it is expected that humans will be able to occupy previously uninhabitable locations, thereby allowing the race to continue to expand without the current limitations. In recent years, there have been various theories proposed to counter the possible negative effects of overpopulation, such as exploring the potentials of inhabiting other planets, creating more efficient ways to extract resources, and implementing high-density urban living facilities.
Throughout history, there have been many examples of the problems overpopulation can cause, and many solutions have been proposed, including some rather satirical ones.
There have been a lot of situations where individual communities have faced overpopulation. Jamestown, one of our original colonies here, or one of the original settlements in the Chesapeake, faced problems with starvation. People were dying because they didn't have enough to eat, and that was only a little over 100 people, and there wasn't enough food for that small group. There are other examples, groups that have run out of resources, run out of food. The idea of looking at it as a global issue is something that's relatively new to modern era. That if you look back at 1400, the Black Death wiped out a lot of people in Europe, and so that gave a lot of Europeans especially a sense of expansion, that there's lots of room for lots of people. And again, limited communities would face problems. Ireland, for example, you might have heard there's a famous satire by Jonathan Swift called A Modest Proposal, where he proposes that people in Ireland would eat babies. And as a solution to the overpopulation problem and the starvation and the famine, and this was, I believe, early 19th century. And so there was a problem with famine and a shortage of resources for that specific country and specific area. But this whole idea of kind of looking at it globally is something really sort of new for the 21st century.
It's kind of an extreme situation.
Exactly. I think that's a very extreme situation.
So then,
he was being satirical. Other than that, it was a satire, sort of saying, well, if you're so worried about overpopulation, what about what he really wanted people to do was reallocate resources. He didn't legitimately advocate eating the young people.
So what will happen? Are we really doomed? Will the amount of resources to meet our needs run out? Are the growth rates unfixable and irreversible? If so, how much time do we have left? Or will we overcome this problem with ideas such as the one-child policy and new technology? The answer lies in our own hands.